First, let's cover some acronyms. XTTS means cross-platform transportable tablespaces, and FTEX is a version of that for full transportable export and import. And we'll get into what those different acronyms and abbreviations mean as we go along. Typically, cross-platform transportable tablespaces is used for migrating entire databases cross-platform or indeed cross-endian. It can be used to migrate an individual tablespace data file here and there, but normally it's used for a full database to go cross-endian. So I've used that term cross-endian twice now. What does it mean? Well, the concept of endianness is tied to both your CPU architecture and your operating system. And what it means is that the combination of those two things can represent data differently depending on that combination of architecture and operating system. In a big-endian system, the high-order bytes in a segment of data, for example, are conceptually on the left, similar to how we in the West would write numbers, for example, with the tens digit to the left of the ones digit. But on a little-endian system, the high-order byte is on the right, which is the reverse, obviously, of a big-endian system. This means that the data in your data files or parts of that data might be represented differently on one operating system or another. And that means that if you're going to migrate from a big-endian platform, say AIX or Solaris or HBUX, over to a little-endian platform such as Windows or Linux, there's some conversion of the data files needed when we do that. You can't just take a data file from a big-endian system and put it in place on a little-endian system and start running it, or vice versa. Now, there's a specific reason we're talking about this right now, and that is that the Spark supercluster hardware support expires at the end of June 2024, which is this year, during which we're recording this webinar. And that means that all of those supercluster customers are looking for their next platform or next server to migrate to, and a lot of them will be migrating from supercluster to Exadata, which means a big-endian to little-endian migration. You might have a platform, any one of these platforms in the list, and you may not know which endianness you have, big-endian or little-endian, just based on the operating system. For example, Linux on Z series or PowerPC is actually big-endian, whereas on x86 or ARM, it's a little-endian platform. On the other hand, you can have the same processor, such as an Itanium, which is big-endian running HPUX or little-endian running Linux or OpenVMS. So if you want to query the $V transportable platform view, you can tell what endianness you are on and what endianness you might be moving to. The most common migrations we're seeing now for the cross-platform transportable tablespace method are from big-endian platforms like AIX, HPUX, and Solaris, going towards Linux in particular, which is that little-endian platform, x86 Linux, whether it's AMD chips, Intel chips, or even ARM architecture. All of those are little-endian platform. So that's why you might be interested in this technique.